All right, today we're jumping into a truly incredible story. It's a journey about reversal, about going from the absolute bottom to a place of unbelievable influence. And it's all about finding a greater purpose right in the middle of what looks like a total disaster. Let's get into it.
I want to start with this question, because it really is the heart of the entire story we're exploring. It's a pretty wild idea, right? But it perfectly sets the stage for the life of Joseph, a young man whose world was completely turned upside down, for what seemed to be the worst possible reasons. So let's start at what looks like the end of the road for Joseph. He's been betrayed by his own brothers, stripped of everything he knows, and sold into slavery in Egypt, a place that's totally foreign and, frankly, terrifying. And get this, he isn't sold to just anybody. He's sold to Potiphar, a big shot, a high-ranking official in Pharaoh's inner circle. From any human standpoint, this is it. Game over. He's a teenage slave with absolutely zero hope of ever getting out. This moment really gives us two totally different ways to look at the same event. From our point of view, it's just awful. It's unjust humiliation, hopeless servitude. But there's another perspective in play here. The idea that this wasn't just random, meaningless cruelty. What if it was actually a divinely guided first step towards something much, much bigger? And this verse from Proverbs just nails that idea. You have humans, in this case Joseph's brothers, making their own terrible, evil plans. But a higher power was still directing where Joseph's steps ultimately landed, guiding him toward a future that he could have never imagined.
So, how in the world does this story start to turn around? Well, even in these horrific circumstances, there was a crucial element at play that was about to change absolutely everything for Joseph.
This right here, this single verse is the pivot point for the entire story. A slave in a foreign land is somehow described as a prosperous man. How is that even possible? Well, the answer is right there in the first 5 words. And the Lord was with Joseph. That's the key. And this isn't just some passing comment. This phrase gets repeated over and over. It becomes the anchor for the whole story. It's this constant reminder that Joseph's success had nothing to do with his physical location or his social status, but everything to do with this divine presence in his life. Okay, so this is so important to understand. When the text says prosperous, it doesn't mean he was rich or free. He wasn't. In this context, prosperity was the tangible, visible outcome of God's favor and presence, something so obvious that even his pagan master could see it.
Now, when you combine this divine favor with Joseph's own character, you start to see some truly shocking results. Let's just track his career path inside Potiphar's house for a second.
I mean, his rise is just staggering. He starts at the very bottom, a nobody, but he serves with such integrity and works so hard that he catches his master's eye. And we're not talking about a small promotion here. Potiphar puts him in charge of everything he owns. For a foreign slave to get that kind of trust, it was completely unheard of.
This proverb just captures the principle perfectly, doesn't it? Joseph was diligent in the business he was given, even the demeaning business of being a slave, and this very diligence would, quite literally, one day bring him to stand before the king of Egypt.
So you see, his promotion wasn't just a reward, it was preparation, it was training. Being faithful in managing one household was the training ground for the massive responsibility he would one day have, managing an entire nation through a devastating famine.
And the story gets even more interesting, because the blessing on Joseph's life couldn't be contained. It started to spill over, affecting everyone and everything around him.
This is just amazing. Potiphar, this pagan Egyptian official, suddenly finds that his whole household, his business, even his fields are being blessed. And why? The text is explicit, for Joseph's sake. The blessing on Joseph was so powerful, it just radiated outward.
You can actually trace this incredible ripple effect. It starts with God, it flows to Joseph, and then from Joseph it extends to the entire house, to the business, to the agriculture. Everything he touched was blessed. Joseph essentially became a living, breathing channel of divine blessing. And what's so cool is that this actually fulfills that ancient promise made to Abraham centuries earlier, that through his descendants, even other nations would find blessing.
So, all of this brings us to the ultimate lesson of the story, a really powerful concept you could call the providence paradox.
These are Joseph's own words spoken years later to the very brothers who sold him.
This is his final summary of his entire unbelievable life. You guys intended this for evil, but God intended it for good.
And that's the paradox right there. It's the idea that the most unjust, evil things humans can do can become the raw material that God uses to bring about a greater redemptive good. The path to saving millions from starvation literally began with an act of betrayal and slavery.
Joseph's life becomes this powerful, real-world example of this timeless principle from the New Testament. This pattern of turning evil into good isn't just a one-time thing. It's presented as a continuous way that God works in the world for those aligned with his purpose.
And that really just leaves us with a final and maybe a challenging thought. If we look at the difficulties, the injustices, or the major setbacks in our own lives through the lens of Joseph's story, it kind of forces us to ask, what might God be in the process of turning unto good? That is a powerful question to reflect on.